spokesperson from each communal council that come in, but that's the body that makes any of the decisions. However, the people who are in the parliament are not representatives. They are spokespeople. So any decision that is made in the parliament has to be approved in the citizens assembly. So it creates a structure of direct participation for everyone within the community. And something, as I mentioned, something that is very important when we're talking about communes is the communal economy. The idea for the communal council, the idea is for the communal councils and the communes to be self-sufficient. So that means that there's a whole economic system of the communes that has to do with production, that goes all the way from production, storage, processing, distribution, and consumption. And all of that should be planned within the community. Part of the agenda right now with the communal movements in production, not just producing to produce, not just creating something to create it, but having sustainable agroecological and collective planification for production. When we're talking about storage, not using commercial storage, specifically because of what he mentioned about the hoarding, a lot of the corporations in private companies within Venezuela have actively participated, not just in the last 5 years, but historically during the entire Bolivarian Revolution. The national companies would store their products, and they wouldn't release them into the street to create sabotage before elections, to create general chaos, and also price speculation. The situation of hyperinflation right now has a lot to do with a very fierce few years of hoarding that occurred in the year between 2014 and 2015, which then led to price speculation, massive price speculation later on. So the communes are working on a national level also to create storage spaces that are available and that are direct and indirect social property. The communal property of which I speak, the term in Venezuela is direct social property. When we talk about indirect, it's something that might belong partially to the state, but it is controlled by the communes. Creating plants for processing, distribution, and that distribution can also take the form. There are national networks for what is called trueque, which is kind of like bartering system. We interchange one product. In one commune, in a rural commune, they have corn, and in an urban commune, they have a factory where they produce animal feed. So the rural commune that produces corn brings their corn to the urban commune that has the factory that produces animal feed, and then that animal feed goes back to the rural commune. And also planned consumption. Planned consumption in order to give life and not living only just to consume. I'm going to put on 2 videos now from that I made with VenezuelaAnalysis.com. One of them is an urban commune called El Maizal, which is kind of a landmark commune on a national level. It's located in the state of Lara. Chavez actually went to the commune in Maizal to help inaugurate it. They are located on a large tract of land that was recuperated by the campesinos and then expropriated by the state and then given to the commune or not given, but it was given ownership by the commune in order to allow for them to have a productive project for their commune. And they have been very successful. They produce more than 4,000 tons of corn every year. That corn does get distributed through state-owned companies, but they also distribute it in their own community, and they have used the excedent from that corn production to finance electrification in their community, build roads, put in schools, and also invest in several other productive units. And they've been a very combative commune as well, historically in Venezuela. They're not afraid as well to to criticize the state and also take responsibility in some areas where the state has failed. The second one is an urban commune, Commune Jose Pio de Mayo, which is also located in the state of Lara. The communes have thrived in the state of Lara because it is generally a very productive state in terms of agriculture, but also in terms of industrialized production. It's another commune. This time it's an urban commune, which have participated in the takeover of a Brazilian, a beer factory which belonged to a Brazilian transnational company called Brahma. So I will put on those videos and then we can talk some more about it if you have any questions.
I started videos.
Half a mile down.
So before we get the video started, Mayday Books.
Something I don't know.
And while that's going around,
On March 5, 2009, the national government expropriated 600 hectares of unproductive land in the municipality of Simón Planes in the state of Lara, which would soon become the heart of the commune in Maizal. The commune was organized that same year in response to former President Hugo Chávez's call to begin collectively producing the lands.
Antes que eso era de un terrateniente. Cuando llegó el comandante Chávez inauguró la autopista, da la orden de que se expropie esto porque estos terrenos eran improductivos, únicamente los tenían engordando para venderlos más caros. Y entonces después que los recuperamos los pusimos productivos, tanto en maíz como en ganado.
Desde el 2010 estamos desarrollando proyectos agrícolas de manera colectiva, con una siembra comunal.
And Maizal's first community-owned unit of corn production began producing more than 4,000 tons of corn per year and developed the capacity to invest in other areas of production, such as cattle for beef production, milk and cheese products, gas distribution, and a variety of vegetables which are distributed directly to the inhabitants of El Maizal and surrounding communities. Its agricultural production has also provided resources for the local communal economy, which have allowed the community to enact autonomous policies and implement social programs.
Nosotros, gracias a Dios, hemos comprendido que todo no es para gobierno, pues. Entonces nosotros mismos estamos produciendo para demostrar que desde el poder popular sí se pueden lograr las cosas. Donde Chávez nos dijo como una o nada, aquí le estamos demostrando al comandante que el sueño que tuvo y que tiene desde allá del cielo se puede lograr. Y nosotros lo estamos logrando, construyendo desde la productividad, nosotros mismos autosustentando. Los excedentes van directamente al pueblo, a los 22 consejos comunales.
Nos encontramos ahorita en la quesera donde se realiza el queso, por cual todos los días se realiza aproximadamente 30 kilos diarios, son distribuidos por consejos comunales en operativos de venta. El queso viene muy accesible, en precio solidario, es una red de la cual se trata de hacer un combo entre el queso, la carne, la hortaliza, todo lo que estamos produciendo aquí en el Maizal va directamente del productor al consumidor.
Estos excedentes han sido bien invertidos por el poder popular en todo lo que implica la producción y la reinversión social. Cuando hablo de producción, se podría resaltar las cosas que se han hecho dentro del predio e impulsar más que todo el ámbito de ganadería con la construcción de vaqueras, de queseras, sala de ordeño, mantener el predio como tal, su mantenimiento de potreros, mantenimiento de maquinaria y el atender al personal. El otro porcentaje es invertido en construcciones de cercas de escuelas. Se ha se han hecho casas semilla para personas que no son beneficiadas por el Consejo Comunal a la hora de un proyecto de vivienda. De igual forma, los excedentes del maíz han servido para prestarle ayuda a esos pequeños productores que no son tomados en cuenta por las instituciones competentes, más que todo de la zona alta, para las siembras de hortalizas, tubérculos como cumo, papa. Y estos de igual forma arriman parte de la producción al predio y nosotros a su vez lo pasamos a las personas que no producen y que necesitan de este mismo rubro. También es importante resaltar que los productores del predio, los que hacen vida y hacen posible esta siembra, son bastante beneficiados con esto, ya que ellos no solamente se les cancela su incentivo por el trabajo que hacen, sino que también se le dan sus bonificaciones por útiles escolares, sus bonificaciones en diciembre, sus bonificaciones por enfermedad.
Productive communes such as El Maizal have found that the communal model liberates them from state bureaucracy and corruption that can plague institutions. In the commune, decisions are made in assembly to guarantee the collective well-being, and the use of resources must be publicly scrutinized.
Una de las grandes diferencias que tiene la comuna organizada, el poder popular organizado, es el manejo o la ejecución de los recursos que entran a la comuna del Maizal. ¿En qué sentido? Porque cada recurso que entra a la comuna se hace contraloría, poder popular, se le hacen contraloría a los 22 consejos comunales, todas esas personas que habitan, cualquier persona puede hacer auditoría.
Podemos dejar ver que primero se humaniza, ¿no? Se humaniza el trabajo, se valora al ser humano y se pone por encima de todo. Lo segundo, que las tierras se ponen totalmente productivas. El trabajo productivo es indispensable y casi que clave dentro de una comuna para la sustentabilidad de la misma, ¿no?
As the recent financial war and economic downturn worsened in Venezuela, participation in many communes and popular organizations declined. In contrast, El Maizal became more organized and combative, pushing forward what would appear to be the objective laid out by Chavez in his last speeches, the communal state as the point of no return for the revolution. This has implied two things for El Maizal: the creation of links with other communes and taking over means of production that have been left idle. In several cases, this has meant takeovers of failed state-owned companies. In 2014, El Maizal took over 12 greenhouses belonging to the Venezuelan Food Corporation, Ceval, which were left abandoned for at least 7 years.
Ellos hicieron la construcción de todo esto, tuvieron por un lapso de 7 años. Así como ellos lo construyeron, bien, se vio deteriorarse todo porque no lo pusieron a producir como Estado. Entonces nosotros como comuna asumimos las riendas, tomamos esto, nos empoderamos de estos medios de producción, pues, y ahora que se le está viendo el avance. Aquí por lo menos ven algunas casas que están deterioradas, bueno, vamos con lo mismo que se ha producido aquí, se va reparando. Nosotros sí cambiamos algunos techos, hicimos muchas reparaciones de tuberías y empezamos a trabajar. Pero cuando la mantuvo la empresa del Estado nunca produjeron nada.
The greenhouses are now being gradually repaired and used for cultivation of tomatoes, peppers, and other vegetables. In June of 2017, the workers of the state-owned pork processing company, Porcinos del Alba, solicited the support of the commune in Maizal to take over the plant after having faced administrative abandonment. Without resources or animal feed, the conditions on the site were disastrous.
Esto, compatriota, esto queda tomado desde este momento,
Era una empresa del Estado, Porcino del Alba, viendo la necesidad de exploración que tenía la empresa y la mala asistencia a los trabajadores. Ellos se vieron en la obligación de llamarnos a nosotros, la comuna del Maizal, para que viniéramos a ver qué posibilidad habría de ayudarlos en el rescate de dicha empresa, pues ya que una empresa que tiene capacidad de 6.000 animales, lo cual contara con menos de 600 animales en unas condiciones totalmente deplorables. Cada día se morían más de 50 animales y bueno, ellos en vista de que estaban a punto de perder su empleo ya y la empresa como tal se vieron en la necesidad de acudir a nosotros como comuna lo cual cuando vimos la realidad de la empresa, bueno, no dudamos en tomar de forma bastante organizada con los consejos comunales, la comuna del Maizal y conjuntamente con los trabajadores, con su apoyo. Aquí estamos pues sacando esta empresa adelante. Hoy en día ya se ha recuperado, se le ha invertido algunos recursos provenientes de la comuna y estamos levantándola poco a poco y esperamos que algún día también el Estado nos apoye en esto porque estamos contribuyendo con la soberanía alimentaria del país. Ya se han sacado algunas ventajas hacia el pueblo, que se han beneficiado directamente al pueblo a través de los cracks. Eliminamos toda esa cadena de intermediarios, ahora del productor al pueblo directamente.
Following a slow but apparently successful recovery of the Porcinos del Alba plant, El Maizal was again asked to lead the takeover of an experimental productive facility belonging to the state-owned but opposition-controlled Midwestern University Lisandro Alvarado. According to local farmers and the few remaining workers, the facility has been in a situation of abandon for almost 8 years due to the university administration's alleged lack of resources. But El Maizal says the facility should have no need for continued state financing, given its diverse productive capacity in the areas of cattle, dairy, poultry, fish, and vegetable production, as well as food processing and storage.
El día 17 de octubre del año 2017, en vista de los acontecimientos que están sucediendo aquí en la UCLA, la comunidad solicitó a la comuna del Maizal, ¿verdad?, ese apoyo para que se viniera a hacer esta toma, ya que aquí en estas instalaciones se estaban presentando frecuentemente robos, totalmente una desidia en todas las instalaciones, las vacas, todo lo que tiene que ver con los vacunos se estaba perdiendo. En vista de esta situación, la comuna del Maizal, conjuntamente con la comunidad, toma las instalaciones para hacer un rescate de todas estas áreas que deberían estar productivas. Los piensos que están aquí es primeramente recuperar una raza de un ganado lechero, una raza carora. Estamos en este momento haciendo mantenimiento de los potreros, ya que el monte sobrepasa todo el pasto, los animales no tienen, ya se aproxima el verano. Estamos haciendo también un estudio para meter también la cría de pollo, la cría de cachama, algunos tipos de leguminosa, hortaliza, todo lo que tiene que ver con el plátano, la yuca. Bueno, sacar adelante todo el provecho de este potencial que está aquí en esta infraestructura.
In less than 3 months since the occupation of the university facilities, the El Maizal commune has managed to recuperate 15 dairy cows and increase milk production from 30 to 90 liters per day, as well as reactivate tractors and other abandoned machinery. They hope to have fully recuperated the poultry pavilion with more than 600 chickens for meat and egg production by the end of February.
Vamos adelante y que la ciudad comunal se haga realidad.
El Maizal and the communes of Simón Planas have intensified their bottom-up organization, beginning the new year with a series of assemblies to discuss the creation of at least 3 communal confederations to consolidate an alternative to Venezuela's traditional municipalities based on popular power, self-government, and community-run production. They are confident that their efforts will lead to new levels of organization, autonomy, production, and sustainability for their territories.
The commune in Maizal is actually, we're going to watch one more, it's short. The commune in Maizal, just to give you an idea, actually stretches over 2 states. It doesn't take up the entire states, but because the state lines were not made by the people, they were made by political powers with economic and political interests. They have nothing to do with the reality of the people. So there are people on one side of the state, in the state of Lara, and people on the other side of the border in the state of Portuguesa, but they have economic ties, they have the same kind of agricultural production, they have the same educational centers, they've depended on the same economic centers, so they came together to form the commune in Maizal. And right now they are forming a communal municipality. The idea with the communal councils and the communes is to eventually arrive to a communal state, which means at some point in the future, if the communes are able to keep going, the communes will then come together to form these communal municipalities and then form communal cities. When there is a communal city, there's no need for mayor. When there is a communal state, there's no need for governors. And the idea is to keep building on this structure until you have a communal, instead of a national assembly, an actual communal parliament. So there's a direct democracy all the way from the bottom up and the top to the bottom.
The month of March marked the 4th year anniversary of the worker occupation of the installations of the Brahma beer plant, located in Barquisimeto in the state of Lara, Venezuela, which after 2 years of resistance has transformed into the communally owned company Proletarios Unidos of the Comuna José Pío Tamayo, where it has had 2 more years of growth with local and national impact towards a sovereign economy in the hands of popular power. This is their story.
Brahma Venezuela anunció recientemente el inicio al proceso para el cese de operaciones, que Brahma es una popular cerveza brasileña de la empresa Ambev.
El 18 de marzo del 2013, la empresa, producto de una gran transnacional que domina el mercado, no solamente Latinoamérica, sino Europa, decide prescindir de los servicios de todos los trabajadores, de manera radical e irrevocable.
Aquí estamos un grupo de trabajadores haciendo una denuncia formal acerca de la situación laboral que estamos viviendo desde el pasado 18 de marzo de este año, cuando los directivos de la compañía Brahma Venezuela, mediante una asamblea inusual, nos informan a los más de 360 trabajadores que hacíamos vida para ese momento aquí en la planta, el cierre de las operaciones acá en el país, y que por siguiente comenzaba también un proceso de liquidación dentro del Ministerio del Trabajo Pedro Pascual Abarca, cosa que nosotros no aceptamos.
Por un lado, manifestaba de que no había condiciones de trabajo, dejando materia prima, dejando producción y las máquinas en óptimas condiciones para seguir la producción. Producto de estas contradicciones, obligó a los obreros a profundizar en un proceso de investigación y evaluar y dar al traste con la real posición de la empresa. Era que el 20 de octubre del 2010, la empresa transnacional Ambev con una internacional InBev gestionan o acuerdan, violando lo que establece el artículo 113 en nuestra Constitución de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, violando el no al monopolio. Eso nos impulsó a nosotros a organizarnos y a dar una batalla incansable en la defensa de la integridad de los trabajadores. Organizamos el Consejo de Obreros, donde planteábamos las políticas necesarias para el resguardo y la vigilancia permanente de la planta. Más adelante, el 14 de mayo del 2014, decidimos, producto de la falta de respuesta de algunos miembros de los organismos del Estado, a dar respuesta a los trabajadores, nos llevó a la transformación de buscar al movimiento popular y enmarcarnos en una estructura de estudio permanente de lo que establece la ley de economía comunal, ya que la ley de las comunas dan prioridad al nacimiento de una empresa de propiedad social directa comunal donde los trabajadores buscan el movimiento popular y al campesino pobre para articular y profundizar en el trabajo mancomunado.
Ya no somos trabajadores de Brahma, somos propietarios de la empresa socialista Proletarios Unidos y a la mano con la comuna Pío Tamayo. Ya nosotros en esta fase que estamos, en este nuevo nivel que tenemos, ya nos sentimos dueños junto con la comunidad de esta empresa, con el control obrero, porque nosotros y la comuna somos la diferencia en este país.
Después de esta participación que hemos adquirido, no puede pasar desapercibido el proyecto de agua potable.
Nosotros obtenemos una medida
cautelar por un tribunal agroalimentario. Desde ese momento que nos las dan, venimos trabajando de manera tranquila, ya que hace un tiempo atrás la policía de acá del estado nos acechaba y no nos dejaba hacer nuestra labor social, ya que la hidrológica del estado no cumple su obligación, la que es llevar el agua a diferentes comunidades. Nosotros sí lo hacemos. Venimos haciendo un trabajo con los pequeños productores que son patios productivos de siembra de hortalizas, cría de cochino, de ovejos, de chivos, de gallinas, el cual nosotros llevamos una programación directa a estos productores totalmente gratuita. Aparte de estos productores, nosotros también le damos el agua totalmente gratuita a diferentes comunidades de muy bajos recursos, también a escuelas, a CDI, Seguro Social, al Core 4, la Guardia Nacional, a la Sodilara, a la base aérea y diferentes instituciones de acá del estado.
Bueno, esto tiene su origen aproximadamente hace 2 años, lo que son los patios productivos, pues, enmarcados en lo que es la agricultura urbana y crear conciencia en los socioproductores, producir lo que vamos a consumir y no estar dependientes, porque lamentablemente pues, el sistema capitalista nos inculcó eso, pues, la dependencia de que solamente unos pocos sembraban y la mayoría consumía. Aquí sustentamos este desarrollo del patio productivo con el punto objetivo del Plan de la Nación, que es mantener el medio ambiente o preservar el medio ambiente para generaciones futuras. Utilizamos solamente bioinsumos, los cuales son el humo de lombriz, el sulfo cálcico, el biol. Todo primero lo estamos produciendo también aquí en este estado.
En el año 2016 fue un año de excelente reto para la clase obrera y el movimiento popular. Producto de la escasez, del atropello, de la arremetida en contra del proceso revolucionario y el presidente de la República, Nicolás Maduro, los obreros, el pueblo organizado y el sector campesino sale a la palestra y a la defensa en la acción y profundización del proceso productivo de alimento, en este caso para animales.
A partir del mes de julio del año 2016, nosotros tuvimos la idea de producir alimentos para animales. Hicimos una reingeniería y la capacidad que tiene esta empresa como y muchas maquinarias que podíamos usarla para la producción y darle un vuelco diferente a lo que es la cerveza.
Estamos aprovechando todo el potencial que tiene el productivo de construir su alimento para aves, cerdos, para ganado lechero. Y todo el estado ahora está produciendo unidades de producción, en este caso de gallinas pondedoras. Una relación orgánica, una relación política. Nos interesa la organización del pueblo para que pueda producir los alimentos desde el propio pueblo y hacer paz al pueblo. Solo el pueblo habla de más.
Hemos dado crear nuestro propio centro de acopio para llevarle a la distribución a la comunidad todo lo que sea precio justo. La relación del productor con el centro de acopio es el trueque, que son los que arriban para acá lo que es la carne porcina, la carne bovina. Nosotros le vendemos el alimento y ellos nos dan el 20% de distribución para nosotros distribuírselo a la comunidad con el CER, para abastecer a nuestra comunidad, a nuestro pueblo, para desbaratar la guerra económica, que sea a nivel nacional, que los productos, al deber de llegar a la parte de mercabar, que lleguen aquí a nuestro sitio, a nuestro centro de acopio, aquí donde está la comunidad y a nuestras comunidades.
En el futuro pues, aspiramos una empaquetadora, que ya la tenemos casi lista, una avanzada con las líneas de producción de embotelladora, un plan de siembra que nos puede servir como arranque para el abastecimiento de nuestra planta de maíz amarillo, sin depender del Estado ni de cualquier otro ente que no seamos nosotros, que seamos autosustentables en todo lo que es el transitar de nuestra empresa como tal.
Empresa de propiedad social directa comunal Proletarios Unidos. 4 años de lucha, de resistencia y de avanzada dentro del proceso revolucionario.
Aquí en Proletarios Unidos estamos construyendo un nuevo modelo económico, productivo y social.
Entre el poder comunal, los trabajadores y las trabajadoras rompemos con la lógica burguesa del capitalismo.
Estamos organizando una producción soberana.
Esto es nuestro socialismo.
Este es nuestro socialismo.
Esto es el legado de Chávez.
Todos y todas aquí tenemos que ver con eso. Es parte del alma de este proyecto. Nos cabe una gran responsabilidad ante la historia. Independencia o nada. Comuna o nada.
Are there any questions about the communes or in general?
I want to know how common the communes are in comparison to the country as a whole. Like how often, how many there are, how much of the country they have.
There are currently 3,000 registered communes on a national level, which certainly doesn't cover more than 30% of the national territory. But also there's been a lot of backlash from the right. Of course, the economic sanctions and the current economic situation has greatly affected the capacity of communities to organize themselves. About 80% of the country is organized in communal councils that have a lot more impact, and that's in poorer communities and wealthier communities. Everywhere you will find a communal council because everything from housing, utilities, everything is organized right now through the communal councils. Communes have been a little bit more complicated because it does require a lot more initiative from the community and a lot more organizational capacity. And you know that has been it's been a large process to push forward the communes. I think even within Chavismo, there's not, especially with those who are in a lot of people who work within the government within Chavismo have had also a backlash against the communes because once you're in power, you have power, and it's hard to let go of that. And what really the proposal of the communes in the communal state is socializing power. Everyone has the right to participate. So it hasn't been a completely hegemonic, even though it is definitely part of the Bolivarian Revolution, and it is the horizon for many people who are within the Bolivarian Revolution. There isn't a hegemonic view of what the communes are or what they should be. So it's been a kind of a dialectic process that hasn't allowed it to advance extremely rapidly. Any other questions?
I was wondering, they briefly mentioned in the video that some of the food that they were producing was being distributed through CLAP. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the relationship between the communes and CLAP and how that.
The CLAP are local committees for nutrition or food distribution and production. It was something that was formed, it's a new figure that was formed in 2015, 2016 as a direct response to the situation of economic warfare. Before the economic sanctions, the state has provided a lot of state subsidized food through the Mercal program, especially in the poor communities where people would have problems accessing a weekly market. They would have access to the Mercal, which are kind of like grocery stores but with subsidized food, and they would have, and anyone can go to a Mercal. It wasn't something that was limited to one sector of the population or another. But since most of that food was imported, the Mercals slowly kind of disappeared, and then the CLAPs were another kind of response. It is government subsidized, they do distribute government subsidized food, but in the case of the CLAP, it's to everyone in the community. Everyone goes into a census in their communal councils, and when the government subsidized food arrives, they're given up, every single family, house to house, are given a box of that food. They are called committees of food distribution and production because they should have an element of production. Unfortunately, most of them do not have an element of production. There are a few examples, and if you look at the Venezuela Analysis website, we do have an example of one of the CLAP that have had a wonderful organizational process within the community, integration in the community, and are also working on urban agriculture. But those examples are not I wouldn't say it's the standard, it's the exception. But that is the concept of them. And it's to allow, a lot of the CLAPs have gone beyond just the distribution of government subsidized food. Many of them also have made those direct contact with different factories and with farmers in the countryside, and are bringing that food into the community and also distributing that. We have, in the state of Lara, we have farmers who are producing peppers and are producing plantains and are producing different kinds of tubers. So we go to the countryside, we collect money within our community. We go to the countryside, we buy those products directly from the farmers, who usually have to go through intermediaries who go to the countryside, and they pay the farmers a miserable price, and then they bring them to the city and they sell them at 10 times what they paid the farmer for. So instead, the CLAPs go directly to the countryside. They buy those products directly from the farmers, and then they distribute them within their community at a reasonable price for the community. And sometimes it's with the CLAP, but the communal councils and the communes also participate in a lot of networks of distribution, just the same. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. I forgot. I didn't have an intervention.
Yeah. So before we move on a little bit with the program, you should already have in your hands that have been passed around some flyers for an event on March 17th. The main Venezuela correspondent for Fight Back News will be here at Mayday Books on March 17th to talk to us about the U.S. coup in Venezuela from a Marxist perspective. I'm super excited for it, and I really hope to see you all there. In addition, we have a petition that I'm going to be passing around. We are going to call on our senators to join Representative Ilhan Omar in voicing opposition to U.S. efforts to force regime change in Venezuela. So I'm going to go ahead and start this right here. And then we have one more event coming up.
CJ's got it.
I have it. I'll present it.
Oh, fantastic.
I got you. I'll pull it.
Thank you. So that actually leads into the next part of this program. We have a member of the Anti-War Committee to talk about the current situation in Venezuela, how it's been developing extremely rapidly in the past few months. I would like to present my good friend, Cullen McCormick, to talk to you all about it.
Whatever happened to the pro-war committee? Or
They don't need a committee, they have the government.
So the two angles that I want to emphasize in talking about this most recent coup attempt are privatization on a global scale and the racial dynamics within Venezuela. With the angles of privatization, you hear a lot about how the Venezuelan economy is a one-trick pony, how it heavily relies upon oil exports, how when the price of oil fell in 2014, 2015, everything just kind of came tumbling to a halt. But that's very ironic, because what the IMF and the World Bank want every country to do as a precondition for accepting for getting those loans is they want them to privatize all their national industries. They typically push land reform that favors concentration into the hands of very rich elites, as they do in Brazil, as they did all across Africa. They want the country to find its quote-unquote comparative advantage and begin exporting that almost exclusively. If you look at the economy in Nigeria, 90% of its exports are between petroleum and gasoline. And, you know, Nigeria, no one ever talks about how Nigeria is an example of failing capitalism. It is absolutely a petroeconomy that totally halts, screeches to a halt whenever the price of oil dips, which, by the way, is very beneficial to the U.S. Prices of oil is one of our main inputs, and we depend upon it being cheap to keep our economy functioning as well as it does, which is, of course, disastrous for many countries in the periphery. And what the National Assembly under Guaido has tried to do multiple times is to privatize Venezuelan oil, to re-privatize it, which they can't do because the Constitution is written in such a way that it protects against them, and they have been in contempt of the court since 2015. So, it's not something that they have the power to do, but it's something they very badly want to do, as you can hear John Bolton talking about with developing the oil capacities in Venezuela. And a big part of this is the class dynamics and the clash between the lower class Venezuelans, the poorer Venezuelans, the working class, and the rich Venezuelans. And what they don't tell you in the US media is that richer Venezuelans are also whiter Venezuelans. They are very much allied with racial supremacy. They typically would depict Chavez as a literal monkey when he was in power. They would draw pictures of him drawn like an ape because he's an Afro-Venezuelan. And a lot of the poorer Venezuelans are indigenous and Afro-Venezuelans. And they're the ones who get lynched whenever the right incites these huge mobs against people. And it so deftly highlights the hypocrisy of people like Hillary Clinton and Amy Klobuchar, who claim to be anti-racist and who claim to be pro-feminist and who support these movements of actual fucking lynch mobs against indigenous colonized peoples. And it's all because they want this privatization of Venezuelan resources, which hasn't worked for any other economy in the world that has tried it or has been forced to try it and give up their food self-sufficiency, which is a huge part of what those communes are about. And that's why they're so significant. Because real democratic change and self-sufficiency, you can't do it if you can't feed yourself. And the fact that Venezuelans are developing the capability to feed themselves drives the IMF and the World Bank and the United States insane. They hate it so much. And so you also have to realize that Venezuela has been accepting aid from China and Russia and from pretty much any country that's not actively looking to overthrow it. And that the aid that was being pushed through on the Colombian border on a bridge, which by the way was never opened, was never part of Venezuela's infrastructure, also contained barbed wire and ammunitions because it got burned. They poked through it afterwards and they found it. And it was a pittance compared to the wealth that the US has stolen through sanctions, and a pittance compared to the wealth that the communes themselves have been able to produce, and a pittance compared to the aid that China and Russia have been sending into Venezuela. It's completely laughable. And, you know, if any of, I guess I'll open up questions. I'm trying to be very brief, trying to be legible. Does anyone have a question for me, or are we going to move on to something else?
Well, I see that people are kind of getting up and anxious to go, but before, unless there are other questions, before everyone leaves, I just wanted to say that also Venezuela has been going through a blackout for the last 3 days, which is no small thing. It has been a nationwide blackout, which affects mostly the elderly and people who are in the hospital. It is a question of survival for so many people having access to light. It is something that has been caused by a cyber attack. We believe the United States is involved. Mike Pompeo immediately took advantage of the situation to say no food, no fuel, no light, no electricity, no Maduro. Marco Rubio, the United States Republican senator in Florida, tweeted last week that Venezuela will soon run out of food and fuel. And 2 minutes after the blackout happened, he immediately was on Twitter announcing that the blackout had happened. How he can get confirmed in 2 minutes when Venezuela is in a blackout that is really the situation and that it is a nationwide blackout and that the backup generators in Venezuela did not function, I don't know. But there's obviously a connection. Juan Guaido began tweeting today demanding that the military rise up and throw a coup, otherwise they will not stop the attacks. So you tell me who is responsible for that situation. And he has also said time and time again that Venezuelan lives are no cost for the objectives that they had put before them, which is regime change. So it is very important, and I encourage all of you to talk to your senators, support Ilhan Omar, which is she's one of the few United States representatives who has stood up against U.S. intervention in Venezuela. I might have some differences with her in some of her discourse about Venezuela, because she still speaks of authoritarian regime or the need for democratic change. I do see the reality in Venezuela is very different, but I admire and I appreciate her willingness to stand up in front of the United States House of Representatives and speak her position and speak against United States imperialism and question Elliot Abrams, who is the ambassador from the United States to bring on this humanitarian aid from the United States into Venezuela. He is an international war criminal who was involved in the Contras in Nicaragua, is responsible and has covered up millions of deaths in Latin America and Central America in the 1980s and 1990s, and he has an obvious agenda as well with Venezuela. So I do encourage you to take action, look for alternative sources, and talk to your senators, talk to your representatives. And I know the Anti-War Coalition or Committee, has made a lot of effort here in Minneapolis to have street protests and make a presence within the community. And I just wanted to mention as well, I have here a sign-up sheet for anyone who's interested in signing up for the newsletter for Venezuela Analysis. We do have a delegation that is going out on the 14th of May to Venezuela. We organize 1 to 2 delegations a year, so if you are interested in going on a delegation or having more information about Venezuela, please do sign up for our newsletter, because we get out the information through our weekly newsletter. And I also have copies of the documentary here if you're interested for a $10 suggested donation. If you don't have the $10, don't worry about it, but if you want a copy of the documentary, Venezuela Bolivariana, it is available here.
And I just wanted to close out, on the 15th, Friday, March 15th at 5:30, we're protesting in front of Klobuchar's office for a number of reasons, partly for Venezuela, partly to defend BDS, and to end U.S. sanctions, and to end U.S. sanctions against Venezuela, and to enact sanctions against Israel. So I will be passing around these flyers for everybody's convenience. Yes, Misty?
Can we just say thank you to Katrina for coming in?
Yeah.